Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most perplexing events in American history, the assassination of JFK.
Oh yeah, it's a rabbit hole for sure.
We're going to be looking at an article called Shell Games, Part 2, from the Third Decade Journal.
Interesting.
It really digs deep into how the physical evidence was handled in this case, and let me tell you, there are some seriously questionable practices.
Seems like we're in for a wild ride.
So strap in and get ready to question everything you thought you knew. Okay, so right off the bat, the author, Jerry Rose, drops this bombshell about a blanket found in the Payne garage, the one Oswald supposedly used to hide the rifle.
Right, the alleged murder weapon.
Exactly. But here's the thing. When the police found it, the blanket was empty, yet they claimed there was an outline of a rifle visible. It's like, where did the rifle go, and how could there be an outline if it was wrapped up?
Like a ghost gun, huh?
Exactly. It just doesn't add up.
And then you have Marina Payne's testimony, which adds another layer of confusion.
Oh, yeah. She changed her story a few times.
Right. Initially, she said she moved the blanket thinking it contained tent poles. But later, she contradicted herself. So did she move it or not? Was it even touched before the police got there?
It's a mess. But wait, it gets even weirder. An FBI agent named Gordon Shanklin initially reported the blanket was found at the Texas School Book Depository, not the Payne garage.
Whoa, wait a minute. That's pretty big discrepancy.
It is. So now we have two locations for this mysterious blanket.
Which makes you wonder, where did it really come from? And was it even connected to Oswald at all?
Exactly. Rose actually connects this to the paper bag evidence from part 1 of this article series, which he believes was totally fabricated. So we're already seeing a pattern of potentially compromised evidence.
And where there's smoke.
There's fire.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to another piece of this puzzle. The infamous backyard photos of Oswald holding the rifle and the pistol. The ones they used to link him to both the assassination and the Tippit murder.
Those pictures are everywhere. But they've always seemed a little off to me.
Oh.
The shadows just look strange. And the rifle seems longer than it should be. And Oswald's stance, it just doesn't look natural.
Yeah, even without considering Oswald's claims that they were fakes, those photos raised some red flags.
Wait, Oswald claimed those photos were fake.
He did. He said they were composites, with his face superimposed on someone else's body. But even if you set that aside, the chain of possession of the camera used to take those photos is highly suspicious.
Okay, so the photos themselves are questionable. And now the camera's got issues, too. This is getting deep.
Hold on tight, because we're just getting started.
So fill me in. What's the deal with the camera?
Well, when the police initially searched the Payne residence, the camera was missing. Poof, vanished into thin air.
Convenient.
Right. But then later on, it magically reappeared, supposedly found by Robert Oswald, Lee Harvey's brother.
Okay, that sounds a little too convenient.
And the FBI's explanation for this delay in obtaining the camera is, well, let's just say it raises more questions than it answers. It's almost like the camera's sudden appearance was perfectly timed to support the story they were building.
So we've got a camera with a shaky chain of possession and photos that already look suspicious on their own. But Rose doesn't stop there. He questions whether the photos were even taken at 214W Neely, Oswald's alleged residence.
Yeah, that's a good point. If those photos weren't taken at Oswald's place, the whole narrative starts to crumble.
Right. It's all about connecting those photos, the weapons, and Oswald to that specific address. But what if that connection is totally bogus?
That's exactly what Rose is suggesting. He points out that the evidence supporting Oswald's residency at 214W Neely is pretty weak.
Like what?
We have conflicting statements from landlords about rent collection, there's a lack of official records to confirm his residency, and get this, there's even evidence that the utilities were still running at that address after Oswald supposedly moved out.
Hold on, so the utilities were still on even though no one was supposedly living there? That makes zero sense.
Exactly. It raises the possibility that someone else was living there or that the whole story about Oswald living there is a fabrication.
So we've got potentially staged photos, a camera that magically appears and disappears, and now we're not even sure if Oswald lived where they say he did.
It's a tangled web, my friend.
It is. And speaking of tangled webs, there's one more thing that really bothers me about those backyard photos. I mean, they were plastered all over the media, right? But I've never seen any other photos or even descriptions that match that specific backyard at 214W Neely.
That's a great point. It's like that backyard only existed in those photos.
Exactly. So if those photos weren't taken at Oswald's supposed residence, where were they taken? And why connect them to that address later?
Those are the million-dollar questions. Rose proposes that the photos might have been taken at a completely different location, and then deliberately linked to the Neely address later on.
Almost like they were setting him up.
That's what it looks like. It's as if someone was carefully constructing a narrative, a story designed to point the finger directly at Oswald.
It's like someone's playing a shell game with this evidence. They keep moving things around, making it impossible to know what's real and what's not.
It's a classic misdirection tactic. And speaking of things that seem to have magically fallen into place, let's talk about that bus transfer coupon found in Oswald's pocket, the one that supposedly placed him near the assassination scene shortly after it happened.
Oh yeah, the bus transfer. That's always been a weird one for me. How did they even connect that little piece of paper to a specific bus driver and route?
Well, the official story is that they used the punch marks on the coupon to identify the driver, a guy named Lloyd McWaters, and his route. But get this, they just happened to find McWaters driving a completely different bus route right in front of police headquarters.
You're kidding. What are the odds of that? It's almost like he was waiting for them.
It's a pretty incredible coincidence, isn't it? And Rose points out that this chance encounter really messes with the timeline presented by the authorities. News reports from that day suggest it actually took the FBI 12 hours to find McWaters, not the quick turnaround they claimed.
So the official story and the media reports don't match up. Shocker.
Right. And guess what? The bus transfer coupon, like that gray jacket we talked about earlier, is missing from the initial evidence inventories. It just pops up later, like magic.
Okay, so we've got a disappearing blanket, photos that might be staged, a camera that plays hide and seek, and now a bus transfer coupon that conveniently appears when they need it. Am I getting this right?
You're catching on. Rose doesn't explicitly say it, but he definitely raises the possibility that Oswald might not have even taken that bus ride. And if that's true, their whole timeline falls apart. We don't know where Oswald was or what he was doing after he left the depository.
This is insane. Okay, so we've got a potentially fake blanket, staged photos, a disappearing camera, and now a bus transfer coupon that magically links Oswald to the scene. Where do we even go from here?
Well, let's shift gears and look at the evidence from the Tippit murder. This is where things get even more complicated. We've got the .38 caliber revolver, the empty shell casings, the bullets they took out of Tippit's body, and of course, the infamous gray jacket. Ready for another deep dive?
Hit me with it. First up, the revolver. Was it ever definitively proven to be Oswald's?
Nope, not really. There are conflicting stories about who actually had the gun when they arrested Oswald at the Texas Theater. And while investigators did show that Oswald had ordered a .38 caliber pistol around the same time he ordered the rifle, they never actually proved that this specific gun belonged to him.
So we have a mystery pistol, and even if it was Oswald's, there's another problem. The ballistics. Didn't the bullets from Tippit's body not match the revolver?
That's right. The FBI tried to explain this away by saying that the pistol had been modified, which messed up the caliber just enough to prevent a match.
Couldn't someone have intentionally modified the pistol to create that discrepancy? It seems a little too convenient.
It definitely raises some eyebrows, especially when you consider that this isn't the first time we've seen issues with ballistics in this case. Remember that deteriorated rifle barrel? The one they said prevented them from matching the bullets to the assassination?
Yeah, almost like all the crucial evidence is conveniently flawed.
Exactly. And it gets even weirder with the Tippit bullets. There are conflicting reports on how many bullets were actually recovered. And 3 bullets were mysteriously discovered months later, just sitting at the Dallas police headquarters.
Wait, hold on. They lost bullets from a police shooting for months. This is beyond sloppy. How can anyone trust this investigation when the evidence is handled this carelessly?
Good question. Okay, let's move on to those empty shell casings from the Tippit murder scene. Remember how witnesses claimed the killer just knocked the shells out of the revolver right in front of them?
Yeah, that never made sense to me. Don't you have to manually eject shells from a revolver?
You are absolutely correct. It doesn't work the way those witnesses described. But setting that aside, the chain of possession for those 4 shell casings is a total mess. Multiple discoveries, conflicting accounts, and witnesses who seem a little shady, to say the least.
Oh no, not another evidence shell game. Give me the details.
So we have this guy, Domingo Benavides, who says he saw the shooting from his truck. He claims he handed 2 shell casings to Officer J.M. Poe. But later on, Poe couldn't identify the markings he swore he made on those casings.
Convenient memory lapse. What about the other two casings?
Those were supposedly found by two women, Barbara and Virginia Davis, who lived across the street from where Oswald allegedly ran away. But their stories are full of holes. They contradict themselves about when and where they found the casings, and their initial statements to the police actually cast doubt on Oswald's guilt. But later, when they testified before the Warren Commission, they changed their tune completely.
So their memories magically aligned with the official narrative. Something's fishy here.
And get this. The Davis women had a connection to Jack Ruby. Their phone number was found in his notebook. Coincidence? Maybe. But it adds another layer of intrigue to an already bizarre story.
Okay, I'm officially lost in this maze of evidence. Every time we turn a corner, we run into more questions than answers. It's like a never-ending game of Clue, but with real-life consequences.
It's definitely a head-scratcher. But hey, at least we still have the gray jacket to unravel. And something tells me it's going to be just as wild as the rest of this evidence.
Okay, before we get to the gray jacket, I just got to say, this is all so unsettling. It's like, if we can't even trust the evidence in this case, how can we be sure of anything?
Yeah, it's really concerning. All these questionable practices just cast this huge shadow of doubt over the entire official narrative.
It's like we're trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. The more we dig, the more we realize there's nothing solid to stand on.
And it makes you wonder, how common is this kind of stuff? Not just in the JFK case, but in other high-profile cases, too. Cases where there's a ton of pressure to find answers, no matter what.
It's a scary thought. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to how important it is to have a solid chain of custody for evidence. It seems like it should be a no-brainer, but the JFK case shows how easily things can go wrong, how mistakes or even intentional manipulations can just completely derail the whole investigation.
Absolutely. Any break in that chain of custody opens the door for tampering, contamination, all sorts of problems. It's like a virus that spreads and infects the whole body of evidence.
Okay, I'm officially spooked. What about the gray jacket? Does that final piece of the puzzle shed any light on this mess?
Unfortunately, this article just gives us a quick glimpse of the Gray Jacket saga. Rose promises to dive deeper into it in the next installment of Shell Games, but from what he does say, it sounds like the jacket has its own share of problems, more the same questionable handling we've seen with the other evidence.
So more questions than answers, huh? Typical JFK. I guess the big question is, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should we be thinking about after going down this rabbit hole?
I think the most important thing is to be critical thinkers. Don't just blindly accept the official narrative. Look at the evidence, question assumptions, and be open to alternative explanations. Remember, history is often written by the winners, and it's up to us to dig deeper and challenge what we're told.
Yeah, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information out there, especially with a case like this. But you're right, we can't just be passive. We have to actively engage, question, and search for the truth.
Exactly. And be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers or who dismisses any questioning of the official story as conspiracy theories. The truth is usually messy, and it takes time, patience, and a healthy dose of skepticism to get to the bottom of it.
This deep dive has definitely made me realize how complex evidence handling can be and how crucial it is to maintain that pristine chain of custody. It makes you wonder how many other cases might have been decided on shaky evidence, how many injustices might have happened because of careless mistakes or deliberate manipulations.
It's a sobering thought, and it shows how important it is to have constant vigilance, transparency, and accountability in our justice system. We have to demand better from the people who are supposed to be upholding the law and making sure justice is served.
Well, folks, that concludes our wild ride through the shell games of the JFK assassination. We've encountered missing blankets, phantom bus rides, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. But the biggest lesson we've learned is the importance of critical thinking, questioning authority, and demanding more from those who shape our understanding of history.
And as always, we encourage you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and never stop asking questions. The truth is out there, waiting to be discovered.
On that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. If we can't even be certain about something as basic as the chain of possession of evidence, what does that say about our ability to find the truth about anything? It's a question worth pondering as we continue to wrestle with the mysteries of the JFK assassination and the larger issue of who really holds the power to shape our understanding of history.